So the focus for today's revision lesson is Macbeth, and in particular how to tackle a question on the AQA paper. And the question's theme is the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. A reminder on screen at the moment as to where to head to find a lot more videos just like this one. Before we get on with the question, look at the assessment objectives. AO1, AO2, AO3, 12 marks, 6 marks, and +4 for SPAG in this question. So pause the screen, have a look at those in a little bit more detail if you need to. So what does the question actually look like? Okay, well on the screen in front of you, you've got an example question. The first thing you do when faced with the question is you read the bold writing on top of the extract, at the top of the extract. Read the following extract from Act 1, Scene 5, then answer the question that follows. In this scene, this is the important bit, in this scene, Macbeth has returned to his wife and she has read his letter. She wants to kill Duncan when he comes to their castle. It gives you the context for the extract within the wider play. It's really important to get that so you know roughly the area that you need to be looking at. The next thing you do is you actually skip to the bottom of the extract and read the question. Starting with this speech, explain how Shakespeare presents the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Write about how Shakespeare presents the relationship in this speech and how Shakespeare presents the relationship in the play as a whole. So your knowledge of the play is such that you'll be able to answer that question now without too much hesitation. What is their relationship like? Okay, now you then read the extract with that question in mind and you highlight or underline anything that's relevant, pertinent to that specific question. Okay, before you start answering the question, maybe jot down some ideas that you've got about the topic involved. So in this case, their relationship. So I've broken their relationship into two sections within the play. At the start and then after Duncan's murder, because there is a transformation in the nature of their relationship once Duncan has been murdered. So initially, their relationship is close, intimate, united, so they're together, they're both ambitious, unbalanced, but not in favour of Macbeth as you would expect. There's a gender role reversal at play at the start of the play, where Lady Macbeth is the dominant one of the two. Their relationship is also dangerous and exciting. Remember, Macbeth gets the greeting from the witches and he can't wait to tell his wife, so much so that he actually sends a letter ahead to inform her of his experience with the three witches. But then after Duncan's murder, their relationship becomes increasingly distant. They become isolated from each other. Macbeth is back in control. He cuts his wife aside. After Banquo's, the failed Banquo and Fleance murder attempt, Macbeth doesn't turn to his wife. In fact, he doesn't even consult his wife in the planning of Banquo's murder. Instead, he turns to the witches. He goes back to the witches. So where once Lady Macbeth was his confidant, now it's the three witches. In spite of him saying that damned all those who trust them. Okay, and there's a lack of warmth then as the play develops as well. So going back to the question. Read the extract with the specific question in mind, and you can highlight or underline. I've just done a quick one here. Doesn't matter if you can't read my writing. It's the idea. I'll go through all the points in a few minutes anyway. So this is just an example of how you could go about revising an exam question, and in the exam itself. You certainly highlight or underline the keywords in the question, plus anything from the extract that stands out as relevant to that question. So I've highlighted a few things there. You can again pause, or if you've got the PDF printout, if your membership allows that, then you can have the extracts alongside you and you can see what I've done in more detail. So I've isolated the actual question. Starting with this speech, explain how Shakespeare presents the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Write about how Shakespeare presents the relationship in the extract and how Shakespeare presents the relationship in the play as a whole. I'll touch on this in a minute, but there are two ways to approach the 2 bullet points. You can write 2 points on the extract and 2 points on the wider play, or you can deal with both extracts and the wider play as you're making your points. So you can link from within the extract to other parts in the play if you think that makes your answer more fluent, and I'd probably personally advocate that approach. Okay, so this is the key element of the question, so the relationship. The examiner will be looking at how you apply your knowledge of the play along with your analytical skills to this specific question. Don't just retell the story. You need to be analytical. This means that in every paragraph you'll be referencing how the relationship is presented and whether this representation is what you'd expect. So that gender role reversal, that's a technique that Shakespeare employs to convey the relationship or the nature of the relationship between husband and wife. Focusing on the extracts, you should identify pieces of evidence that support the points you wish to make. So, how is the relationship presented in this extract? Perhaps close, but unbalanced. Leave all the rest to me. Who's in control? You'd imagine that in the Jacobean era it would be Macbeth's decision to leave all the rest to me. But in fact, it's not what you would expect. It's his wife, Lady Macbeth, who is taking control of the situation, planning everything in great detail. All Macbeth has to do is turn up and commit the actual murder itself. I say all he has to do, that's quite a lot. And then the wider play, then explore how the relationship is presented elsewhere. For example, the growing distance between the pair, the regaining of control by Macbeth and his cold, emotionless response to news of his wife's death. So if in the extract itself the relationship is unbalanced, with Lady Macbeth in control, at that point you can show how that develops, and then you can point to the growing distance between the pair in the planning of Banquo's murder. Macbeth didn't involve Lady Macbeth at all. In the aftermath of Fleance escaping and Macbeth's paranoia taking hold, he doesn't confide in his wife. Instead, he goes to the three witches, as I've already mentioned. So as you make your point on the extract, you can link it elsewhere in the play rather than separating them out. Then jot down some quotations to support this. So, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. So that's in relation to, I wonder how many of you can tell me who says that and to whom and what the context is. Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. Macbeth says this to Lady Macbeth when she's curious, she's puzzled, she thinks he's planning something to do with Banquo. But instead of telling her and confiding in her, he just tells her to be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. He's quite dismissive of her. And then when he's informed of his wife's death, he simply says she should have died hereafter. Now, a couple of interpretations to that. One is that it's an inconvenient time for her to have died, or two, well, we all have to die sometime. Either response, either interpretation, it reflects poorly on Macbeth, paints him as quite a cold individual, and their relationship is lacking any warmth whatsoever. He seems distinctly unmoved by news of her death. Okay, how to structure your answer? Well, I've alluded to this. The first is to write 4 detailed paragraphs, 2 based on the extracts and 2 from the wider play. The second approach is to write maybe 3 detailed paragraphs where you incorporate both the extracts and the wider play into each point. Now, I would advocate that approach, but for the benefits of this question, this video, I've taken the more methodical approach, and I've decided to write 2 points on the extracts and 2 points on the wider play. Either way is fine, whatever you're most comfortable with and whatever your teachers instruct. Okay, so that's how to structure the answer. Now, within each paragraph, the examiner is looking for you to tick certain boxes. So I've simplified the top band level descriptors, and I've suggested this as a format for each paragraph, P to C. So point, evidence, technique, explanation, and then reader or audience impact. To be audience impact in this case. Context is slightly separated there because context is worth 6 marks, which is 20% of the exam mark allocation for this question. So it doesn't need to be in every paragraph, but 1 or 2 paragraphs do link it to. Now, it doesn't have to be in that order, so long as all these elements are contained within the paragraph at some point. That will satisfy the examiner's criteria. Tentative analysis. For high grade answers, this simply means that you don't definitively know anything unless you've got a direct line to Shakespeare himself. So you're using tentative analysis or tentative language in your analysis. Simply means using words like, or connected like perhaps or however, this could imply, and you can offer alternative interpretations as well. So like I just did previously about Macbeth's response to Lady Macbeth, where he says she should have died hereafter. Well, there's 2 possible interpretations to that. I don't know what Shakespeare's absolute intention was with it. It could be that he's irritated by the timing of her death, or well, we all have to die sometime. So there's your alternative analysis, and I'm offering them as suggestions, inferences. And then a general summary of how to analyse. So link, quote, explain, use terminology, so gender role reversal, effect, and then explore alternative meanings. Okay, so again, you can pause that, you can jot down the key points from this screen or have it printed out. Now, a recent session I did with the examiner's feedback with AQA, they reinforced the notion of writing a little introduction, just a simple sentence or 2 short sentences where you set out the main ideas behind your response. So to this question, I've written down a couple of possibilities. Remember, the question is about the relationship between Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. So the relationship between the pair is openly divisive. On the surface, they may appear united, chasing the same ambition, but the divisions become apparent almost instantly, and their failed relationship is intrinsically linked with their doomed plot to secure power. Or the Macbeths had it all at the start: status, success, a bright future, each other. However, they allowed ambition and greed to destroy everything they'd worked for, and their rapid fall from grace reinforces the tragic nature of this story. So I've just summed up in 2 different ways a main idea behind any response I'd give to that particular exam question. Now, first point, I'm going to tell you or suggest 4 or 5 points on the next screen that you could make, but I've written the first point for you, and it's up to you then to replicate this kind of structure for the subsequent points. So here's a possible sample opening paragraph point you could make. This extract opens with Macbeth greeting his dearest love, implying an intimacy in their relationship. Coupled with the fact that she'd just greeted him with such glowing terms as great, worthy and greater, the picture painted here is of a couple who share mutual love and respect for each other. This facade, however, doesn't last for long, as the drama is intensified through Shakespeare's use of half-line breaks, with both keen to discuss the impending arrival of Duncan and their plans to deal with him. Remember that in the 17th century it was believed that the king was God-appointed, so openly discussing with each other how Duncan shall never son that morrow see illustrates an absolute faith and trust they must have in each other, at least in respect to their shared ambitions. A Jacobean audience would be shocked at the determination on display to that end. Remember, killing the king was the most heinous of crimes. In black there you'll see I've highlighted the different elements that the examiner is looking for in any paragraph. And again, it doesn't matter the order in which the elements are. So P to C is all there, but they're not necessarily in that P to C order. So again, pause or print out or jot down, take some notes there. And now, hopefully you can read that. I see I've cut a little bit off the top there. Apologies for that. Here's a table of further points that you can make. 2 from the extract, 2 from the wider play. I've broken them into like point and quotation. That says explanation, incorporating technique in the middle column, and then some links to context. Remember, not every paragraph point has to connect to context, so long as, say, 2 of them do. That should be sufficient. I'm not going to read through all that now. You can pause, zoom in. You can print it out if you've got the PDF. But I'll read the points. So the second point you could make: it soon becomes apparent there's a gender role reversal at play here, with Lady Macbeth in charge and Macbeth playing role of accomplice. She refers to him using the possessive pronoun my to imply ownership and control. This knight's great business into my dispatch and leave all the rest to me, illustrating her total control over the situation and shocking the audience. Third point you could make, this time from the wider play: continued gender role reversal in the immediate aftermath of the murder, where she's organised everything but is reliant upon Macbeth to do the job of a man. She also, when she fears that Macduff is starting to suspect Macbeth because Macbeth killed the guards, she faints and controls the situation, pretends to faint rather, and controls the situation in that respect as well. Second point from the wider play you could make about their relationship: normal gender roles resumed when it is Macbeth telling his wife to be innocent of the knowledge dearest Chuck in relation to his plans for the murders of Banquo and Fleance. He grows increasingly dismissive of her. To the Queen, my lord is dead. Macbeth barely raises an eyebrow, instead stating she should have died hereafter. And he seems like untroubled, unfazed by the fact that the reports had come into him earlier of her increasing illness and instability of mind and her sleepwalking. Okay, so there's plenty there. I mean, come up with other points yourselves. These are just suggested points. They're not a definitive list of points you make for this question. I'm sure you've covered this in class, and you may have picked up some great points from your teachers at school, and that's all good and well. This is just an example of how you could tackle this question. And finally, conveniently I've written that, if there's a question you'd like me to focus on and you're not a member, then please just email me. If not a member, simply join up and then email me. If you've just got a general question and I can maybe answer it in a couple of points, then I'll reply to your emails as quickly as I can. If it's a broader question, maybe on an extract, an exam style question, and I've not covered it already on my website, then give me a couple of days and I'll do a video lesson like this one on that to help you out. And if you'd like me to tackle a specific extract, then do indicate what the text is and where the extract comes from within that text. And obviously as well, if you've got a particular membership package, you can email me actual questions and I'll reply and return them marked with feedback. I think that covers everything. Best of luck in your exams, and see you on one of the other videos. Cheers now, bye.